Hello and welcome to LFC Focus. It is pre-match build-up show time as Liverpool look to bounce back from that absolute horror show against Watford at Vicarage Road on Saturday evening, with hopefully a positive result in the FA Cup as we take on Chelsea on Tuesday night at Stamford Bridge in the fifth round of the competition. This is now the furthest we have ever gone in the FA Cup under Jurgen Klopp as our manager, the furthest we've gone since we reached the semi-final stage back in 2015. And I think now, given everything else which is going on at the moment in Liverpool's season, we've got to really take this tournament seriously now. And the Watford game is only an extra incentive for us to do even better in the FA Cup, because of course now the idea of making history through going invincible in the Premier League has gone completely down the drain. I think one thing that should be a massive focus for Liverpool, and always should have been a massive focus from the start of the season, but has almost come into even sharper focus now, is the fact that we could end this as treble winners. We've got an absolutely fantastic opportunity. Of course, the European Cup is still very much in the air of what happened against Atletico, but the league is all but wrapped up, I think it's fair to say, regardless of what happened in that game against Watford. So we've got a great chance here to really make some history and cement this side's place as one of the best sides in Liverpool history. And, you know, the FA Cup is a fantastic opportunity to do that. And of course, with the game against Watford, we really do need to see a bounce back. And I think a lot of players do need to start playing themselves into form. Jurgen Klopp said that he isn't super concerned about rhythm. I know some people are starting to call it into question, because since we came back from the winter break that we had, we've played 5 games, we've lost 3 of those. Of course, we've played 4 games, we've lost 2 of those, the one against Watford and the one against Atletico Madrid. And the performances against Norwich and West Ham weren't particularly brilliant, so I think that will probably come into his mind in the team selection. I know I mentioned after the game against Watford, I was thinking about the time back a few seasons ago in Klopp's first full season where we lost to Burnley and he decided to put out a very high strength 11 for a League Cup match away to Burton Albion, just to allow the players a chance to bounce back as quickly as possible, because I think they'll be absolutely raring to go in this game and prove that Watford game was just a blip and that they've still got what it takes to become a treble winning side, because as we all know, that is well within Liverpool's capabilities for this season. So in terms of actual team news going into the game, injury news wise, Joe Gomez and James Milner are both back after they missed out in the game against Watford. James Milner's obviously been out for a little bit longer. Joe Gomez just had a knock that kept him out of that game, and that is absolutely fantastic. I think both of those players have got a huge chance of being involved in the starting 11 for this match. In terms of whether or not Jurgen Klopp plays the kids, this is now the big question, of course, with the FA Cup getting gradually closer to the business end of the season, and of course with the possibility of taking our feet off the gas in the Premier League. Although after the Vicarage Road result, I think we'd all quite like to see at least another win and a full strength team in the game against Bournemouth at the weekend. But before that, I think there is definitely a focus on the idea of switching things up with the team and not playing anything that even closely resembles the one that played in that game against Shrewsbury in the replay. Jurgen Klopp has, of course, said that this will be a totally different side. There'll be much more first-teamers, at least in and around the squad. Whether or not they'll be in the starting 11, he basically declined to say, which is, of course, understandable given the fact that Chelsea aren't exactly telling us their starting 11 before the game, so why on earth should Jurgen Klopp tell them his in the press conference or anything like that? But I do reckon, given that he didn't give us much of a straight answer as maybe he has done in the past, that we will see a few more first teamers. And as I said, with it now getting closer to the business end of the competition and being some more difficult opposition as well, you know, Chelsea are going to be no pushover, especially with it being away from home. I think we're going to see something approaching Liverpool's first choice starting 11, certainly in comparison to the teams that have been put out in the FA Cup so far and over past seasons under him as the manager. In terms of youngsters that could play in the game, though, Harvey Elliott will not be available, despite the fact he's basically been an ever-present in the cup matches for Liverpool so far this season. He has instead travelled with the under-19s for their away game in the UEFA Youth League round of 16 against Benfica, which, to be honest, is probably best for him. You know, there's absolutely no rush on his development. He's 16 years old. We know how fantastic the kid is. But if he wasn't guaranteed to start and play all of this game, and he wasn't guaranteed to, you know, benefit massively from the experience, it makes sense for him to go and be, you know, the star man for us on the European stage. Even if it is just an under-19s match, that will still be fantastic experience for him. And like I said, at 16 years old, we don't have to rush him into the side anytime soon. So he will not be available. However, some of the other youngsters are going to be there for Liverpool. Curtis Jones has been training with the first team. Nico Williams hasn't travelled with the under-19s. Kiana Hoover, Jurgen Klopp also mentioned him. He's going to be available for us in some capacity if Jurgen Klopp wants to call upon him in this game. So I think we'll see a little bit of a blend, if I had to put money on it. I think there's a lot of youngsters who have done more than enough to stake a claim in this side and show that they deserve to be playing in this Liverpool team, whether it's in FA Cup matches against lower league opposition or in Premier League matches and games that really, really matter both to the players, the staff and to the fans. So I think we'll definitely see at least some of them, but I think it would be nice to see a few more experienced heads and a bit more quality in the side, given the nature of the opposition and the nature of the game being away from home. So as for how I think we're actually going to line up, I think in goal it has to be Adrian San Miguel. He's been the FA Cup keeper so far this season, aside from that match against Shrewsbury in the replay, because of course he was joining the rest of the first team away on the winter break. So Kevin Kelleher stepped in and did, a reasonably good job. But at the end of the day, Adrian is a professional goalkeeper. He is a senior goalkeeper. He brings experience, and he's been very, very good for us so far in the FA Cup and in the Premier League and Champions League and every other tournament so far this season. So I think he will definitely start between the sticks. Ahead of him, I think we switch both of the centre-backs that played in the game at the weekend. I think Matip comes in for Dejan Lovren, and then Joe Gomez will come in for Virgil van Dijk. Joe Gomez kind of understandable, just allowing him to get some more minutes under his belt after he missed out at the weekend, giving Virgil van Dijk a rest as well, which is almost definitely needed given how many games he's played so far this season and the fact that it was a rare, tough game for him against Watford, so he might need a little bit more recovery time than maybe he usually does, given a lot of the time he doesn't even need to break into a sprint for most matches. And then I think Joel Matip also just needs a little bit more game time. Simply because when Jurgen Klopp spoke about Dejan Lovren's performance, obviously he was scapegoated quite a lot after the Watford game. He essentially said that, Dejan Lovren, like any player coming back from injury, needs some games under his belt, needs some time to really build himself back up to full fitness. That's not going to come immediately, and that maybe explains why he wasn't at his best. But then again, the whole team wasn't at their best at Vicarage Road. So I think if he's thinking that for Dejan Lovren, he's got to be thinking that for Joel Matip as well. Both of them deserve chances to prove themselves in this side, and if Joe Gomez or Virgil van Dijk do get injured between now and the end of the season for any length of time, we have to know which one of those is going to be more ready to make the step up and come back into the side. So I think Joel Matip deserves his chance alongside Joe Gomez this Tuesday night even, and hopefully that centre-back pairing will do a very decent job for Liverpool. And then either side of them, I think we see a bit more rotation in the full-back positions as well. Trent Alexander-Arnold and Andrew Robertson will be needed so much over the coming games, and even though this is an important match as well, I think we've got some more than capable deputies in the side. Nico Williams, I think, definitely deserves a start. He's been fantastic in the cup competitions this season, an absolute revelation both defensively and going forward. He's got so much to his game. It doesn't look like there's one single area that he needs to massively improve upon. He just needs to keep on getting better and keep on getting minutes under his belt. So I'd be really happy to see him in that right back berth and to give Trent Alexander-Arnold a little bit of a rest as a result. And also I think on the left hand side, if we can give Robertson a rest, I think it would be great to see James Milner coming back into the side now that he is fit once again to deputise in that left back role. And then further on in the midfield, this is where I think we'll see wholesale changes as well, partially because of players needing a rest and also not necessarily performing brilliantly at Vicarage Road, and also because there are players who've played in the FA Cup so far this season and been so good that they do just deserve to get another crack of the whip in the centre of the park. And that includes Pedro Chiravella, who's been amazing all the way through this season. No idea where it's come from. He's always just kind of been bang average for Liverpool in the past. He's never been anything special whenever he's been brought in, but this season he looks so much more experienced, which to say that about a 22-year-old is phenomenal, and he's been brilliant in these cup matches, so I think he deserves to hold his place in the number 6 role. Adam Lallana is another player who's been great when surrounded by the rest of the youngsters, offering an experienced head, talking them through the games when necessary, and also just his overall individual game has been brilliant in the cup, so I think he comes back in. And then Curtis Jones, a player that I personally am very excited about, I think absolutely has to start. Another lad who's been delivering in every cup match so far, even when some of the first teamers haven't as well, when they haven't necessarily played to the best of their ability. Curtis Jones has been playing out of his skin every single time. Of course, he wore the captain's armband in that win against Shrewsbury in the replay as well, and I think he's more than earned a recall into the midfield. And that 3 as well just seems to work and function very well. There seems to be some sort of understanding, a really well struck balance between all of them that I think it would be silly to break up. If you're going to play one or two of them, you might as well play all 3, because we've seen it work in the past. So hopefully, fingers crossed, it can do the business at Stamford Bridge on Tuesday night as well. And then in front of them, for the front 3, this is where I think we need to keep at least a couple of the big guns in the side. I think Sadio Mane definitely plays. Jurgen Klopp has relied on him quite a lot when he has changed the side to keep Sadio Mane in there looking back to things like the derby match against Everton, the 5-2, where Origi and Shaqiri come in, but Sadio Mane stays in the team, because I think what's great about him is not only is he a brilliant footballer who can provide individual moments of brilliance, he gets the best out of other players as well. Thinking back also to like the Champions League tie against Barcelona, I know that was an enforced change because of injuries to Salah and Firmino, but Mane, I think, definitely helped having him on the pitch. Even though he doesn't score or get an assist, he does so much to get the best out of Origi and Shaqiri, and both of them end up being very influential figures on the tie as a result. So I think Mane definitely has to stay in the side. Salah as well, I think, should probably play. And then I think down the middle is where we see the change. I think Firmino gets a little bit of a rest, save him for the game against Bournemouth at the weekend, and instead we'll get a little bit of Divock Origi down the middle. So taking a little look at Chelsea then, I think it's going to be just as interesting to see how Frank Lampard plays this in terms of team selection as it is with Jurgen Klopp. I think we as Liverpool fans have at least a relatively clear idea of what he's going to do. I don't think it's going to be the first choice starting 11, but given as far as we are in the competition, as I've said, I don't think it's going to be the kids either. With Chelsea, I can't really tell, to be honest. I think their attitude to this competition will be slightly different to ours. I think as much as it's very important for Liverpool to win it because of the potential treble win or at least a double win or anything like that, for Chelsea, this is pretty much all they've got between now and the end of the season. Their Champions League campaign is pretty much dead in the water with that 3-0 loss to Bayern Munich. They obviously can't win the Premier League. I think top four could potentially become a priority, and as a result, I don't think he's going to go full strength starting 11, or at least something that doesn't resemble the team he plays in the Premier League week in, week out. But also with the lack of silverware opportunities elsewhere, this does represent a great chance for Frank Lampard. We've already seen some other big teams go out of the FA Cup already, so I think he'll see this as at least an opportunity to go far and to give his players some very valuable experience as well. He's put a lot of faith in youth, and that kind of makes it difficult to tell exactly how much experience we're going to see in this Chelsea side, because they have got a lot of experienced players that haven't been playing first team football so far this season. When Jurgen Klopp was in his press conference today, he spoke about how Chelsea's second choice front three even is essentially Pedro, Giroud and Willian, which if you went back a year, you probably would have seen that as being their first choice front three, and then players like Mason Mount and Tammy Abraham and stuff like that would have been the ones you'd expect to be on the bench and then get their chances in the Cups. From what I've seen in the past in the Cups, he's tended to go with a little bit more of a blend, so I think we may see something very similar to that. But what's really interesting is how that will affect them, because I think what massive problem Liverpool had in the first game against Shrewsbury back in the fourth round was that the blend we tried to strike between youth and experience just didn't work. There was absolutely no coherence whatsoever, to the point where the team that we actually played in the replay, which was just youngsters with no first teamers whatsoever, almost actually played better because they functioned brilliantly as a unit. They were coherent. They knew exactly what they were doing. And I think it's down to Jurgen Klopp to make a very smart and carefully considered decision about exactly what players end up playing in this game. And I think the exact same goes for Chelsea, and as I said, they've got nothing really left to them this season apart from the opportunity of silverware in the FA Cup, so I don't think they're going to roll over at all, and I think they will put out a relatively strong side. I think they'll make it a difficult game for us as well. I think game management is going to be absolutely massive, especially with it being away from home. It's something that totally got away from us in the match against Shrewsbury. We allowed them back into it when we really shouldn't have done, and I think a lot of that came from a lack of coherence, and that's why I want to see, at least maybe not across the whole starting 11, but at least in individual places, a more coherent team selection that prioritises a bond between the players and an understanding and a balance between them over just throwing in as much individual quality as we possibly can. That's why I want to see things like a midfield comprised of players like Chiravella, Lallana and Jones. Why I want to see players that have performed so well in the Cup so far, like Nico Williams and Adrian San Miguel in the team. I think it's a tough balance to strike. I, for one, cannot say exactly how we do it because I'm not watching the players week in, week out in training. But if anyone can do it, then it is going to be Jurgen Klopp and his absolutely fantastic coaching staff. So I think it's going to be a brilliant game. If I had to predict it, I wouldn't really want to. I would probably put money on a Liverpool win because I am a massive optimist and I always would do. But being perfectly honest, I think this is pretty much 50-50. I've got no idea who makes out of this one alive, but hopefully it's going to end up being Liverpool. Let me know what you think is going to happen down in the comments below, and also who you think should make up that starting 11 on Tuesday night. Apart from that, that is all for today's video. Thank you guys very much for watching. If you did enjoy the video, as always, you know what to do. Hit that like button down there. Hit that subscribe button there if you're new around here. Check out some of the other videos that have been out on the channel over the past few days. Don't forget to follow at Focus TV on Twitter, and I'll be back tomorrow evening after we've hopefully beaten Chelsea to make it through to the quarterfinals of the FA Cup. Until then, bye for now.